Hey everybody, Questwise here, and today we're going to talk about a game that I was looking forward to getting my hands on for a very long time. A while back, I'll preface this whole video by saying a while back I did a short series of videos on looking for the perfect science fiction game. Now, if you've followed my videos for a long time, you'll know that I'm much more of a fantasy fan than I am science fiction. But I do love them both. I love both genres very much. But when it came to role-playing games, fantasy was always my bag. It's always where I've always gravitated towards, was more of the fantasy elements. But I've always wanted to find a game that, at least for me personally, works very, very well in my mind as a science fiction type of a game. And you'll see that in some of my videos that I did in the past, I kind of had settled upon, I'd gone through Traveler and I'd done a bunch of others. And I kind of settled upon the newest Star Trek game, but that was until now. Only because while I love Star Trek, while I enjoy the lore behind it and everything, I was always more of a Star Wars fan than I was a Star Trek fan. And so while Star Trek, the 2D20 version was very cool, and it's still very cool, and I enjoy it very, very much, this game that I'm going to talk about today really nails it for me, and I think that I'm going to really enjoy playing this far into the future, and I can't wait to see what this company has in the future for this. And what I'm talking about today is the Expanse role-playing game from Green Ronin. This uses their age system, their adventure game engine system that you've seen in things like Dragon Age and Fantasy Age and Modern Age. In fact, this is just a revamp of Modern Age and has some elements as well too. It is based upon the book series by James S.A. Corey, the Expanse series. This is the first book, Leviathan Wakes. I've been remaking my way through this book. There are 8 books in total currently, with a couple of more, I think 1 or 2 more books to complete the series. But I've been remaking my way through because this game takes place between books 1 and 2 of the book series, but also is based upon the TV show, which is currently on the Sci-Fi Channel, I believe. I've only ever watched 1 episode of the TV show, so I can't really speak too much to the TV show. But this is based on sort of both of them. There are quotes throughout the book from the first 3 novels, I believe, but all the action from the core book takes place between books 1 and 2, which is really interesting because I think that gives them a lot of space to expand, and they didn't have to fill a giant book full of details from 8 different stories and then try to, break that up into sort of eras, because the timeline does advance throughout the series to some degree. And so they decided to go with the core book to focus upon just the first book and the beginning of the second book and the kind of things that happens there. Now, if you've not heard of The Expanse before, or any of the novels, the TV show, or the role-playing game, what this is a game or a setting that takes place within our solar system. In the future, a design was made for starships engines called the Epstein drive that allowed us to travel faster through space, but not so fast that we could sort of travel faster than light or do warp speed or any of that kind of stuff. But it did open up the entire solar system for us. Thus we began to travel out, and we established colonies and an entire civilization on Mars and the moon, as well as moons of Jupiter and Saturn. We've begun mining ice from the rings of Saturn. We've gone as far out as to like Neptune and Pluto, and found new minerals and resources that have advanced our technology levels. Now, not technology in the like Star Trek technology where we're talking like dilithium crystals and this crazy, sort of uber things. This is a very, while the authors of the book claim this is not a very hard science sort of setting, it kind of is. Like we're still using things like gunpowder fired weapons, like ballistic firearms. We're using things like we have technology of things like rail guns. We're still using torpedoes in space and that kind of stuff. And the science behind, or the feel of the universe, feels very real and very plausible, to the fact that while we can still travel faster to these other planets, it still takes very long periods of time to go, say, like from Earth all the way out to Saturn. It might take a month or so. And this book covers that stuff very, very well. One of the things I really admire about this book is the openness and the variety of styles of play that you have to play this game. If you want to follow the storyline of Leviathan Wakes, the very first book in the Expanse series, you can do so. There's a section in the back to use that as a sort of like adventure path, if you would. But there's also the prospect of, like, if you just wanted to play a pop star on Earth, or a politician, very like diplomatic kind of game of diplomacy set on Mars. You can totally do those things. And I really love the fact that they left it open enough that you can do those kinds of things. If you just want to play the crew of an ice mining ship out in the belt, you can do those kinds of things. The interesting thing with the Expanse and the universe that James S.A. Corey, which is actually two different authors, what they've created for this is very gritty and visceral and engaging. It's a very interesting universe in that it feels real, and there's a lot of depth and intrigue to what's going on. So, not to spoil anything for anybody who hasn't read the first book, but I will tell you this. The book begins with a mystery looking for a missing girl. It quickly becomes a murder mystery, in that they find that the girl has been murdered, and then it becomes a crazy corporate cover-up conspiracy theory, what the hell is going on kind of thing. It involves a very great core group of characters, from a detective to a crew of an ice mining ship, and the things that happen to them throughout. As the books go on, and that's what I'm really excited about seeing the expanse of this going further, is that there's a lot of stuff that gets set up, a lot of new things that become unlocked, a lot of new characters that become involved, a lot of new conspiracies, and a lot of new intrigues that kind of come to this thing, and the universe expands as well too. Great game. I feel like the age system works very, very well for this, and I've had some experience with the Fantasy Age before. I've read through the Modern Age book as well too. Modern Age was cool, but being sort of generic in that it was, I wasn't a super fan of it, but I could see the potential in it. You could do things like you could recreate the idea of the Matrix, or you could do just a gritty New York Police Department detective noir kind of game with that. I've even seen a few people online use it to run Wild West types of games. So while the Modern Age is really cool, I think it fits this very, very well. It's gritty. It's got the openness to do things like diplomatic encounters, as well as combat encounters, as well as exploration, which this covers a lot of that. If you just want to do a game where you're just exploring the solar system, looking for new discoveries, looking for new ways to mine the different types of minerals, you can do that. If you want to go into very diplomatic, very like I said, conspiracy level type of games, you can do that. If you want to play a game where the crutch of the entire adventure has something to do with weird alien artifacts and or diseases and weapons, you can do that. It's all in here in this one book. And like I said, there's enough crunch in here that it gives you a wealth of opportunities to play. But there's going to be, hopefully, if this does super, super well, Green Ronin will continue to do expansions for this and supplements for each of the books as they go along, expanding this solar system, this universe, into a whole great, awesome ball of fun. The game is gritty. I should say the setting is very gritty. Again, I can't speak for the TV show because I've only seen one episode, but it's not a universe that's all glorified and shiny and beautiful. It's dark. It's got some horrific elements to it. It does have a hard life kind of thing. There are rules in here for living in zero G and the dangers of walking, doing like spacewalks and pulling off adventures and stuff in zero G out in the system. There's some very bad people in the universe. There's already bad people in the world, and it gets even worse as it goes on into this as well too. There are companies and corporations and governments that are seeking sort of their own goals, and in that sort of do horrific things to people. James S.A. Corey, the two authors that created the universe, they've also created their own form of racism. So Earth has its own sort of thing now. It's its own conglomeration, corporation type of thing. Mars is its own thing. But they've created these. There are people out there, humans that have lived. They call them belters, and that's the kind of racism that I'm talking about. They've created this as it's a derogatory term. They actually are part of a larger thing called the OPA, the Outer Planets Alliance. But it's a belter is sort of a negative term to refer to people who have been born and raised in zero G their entire lives, the zero gravity situations, in that they are taller and they are thinner. They look different than normal humans, but genetically they are the same as humanity, and that they were spurned from humans from Earth. But there's this sort of feel of like different, almost racism or bigotry and hatred towards Martians and Earthers and Belters and all sorts of stuff. So there's a wealth of great stuff in here, and it's very gritty and visceral, and it's so good. So if you haven't had a chance to check this out, I highly recommend that you do. I highly recommend that before you play the game or you read this, I would pick it up now, because it does walk through the first book, and it talks about like the world or the solar system as it stands right now. But I would highly recommend that you pick up the first novel, Leviathan Wakes by James S.A. Corey, and read that first, so you get a nice feel for what the universe is, or what this game universe is as well too. And the thing that's really exciting to me too is that, from what I understand from my reading and research and stuff, that this was actually, the two authors actually played a role-playing game, and once they were playing this game out, they came to realize, hey, we have a wealth of information that we could create an entire universe off. Let's start writing a novel kind of on this kind of things. And then Green Ronin picks it up and says, hey, let us publish this thing for you and package it all up beautifully and everything as well too. The other thing that's really nice about this game is it can be as light or as crunchy as you want it to be. Now, I don't mean rules-wise, because the rules-wise, the Adventure Game Engines is extremely easy to explain to people. It is a 3D6 system where you're rolling 3 6-sided dice. One of them has to be a different color. You're rolling dice, you're adding them up, you're trying to beat a target number. That's the basis of the entire thing. Where it becomes very interesting is that if you ever roll doubles on any of those 3 dice, whatever the odd colored die is now becomes the number of stunt points that you have to do extraordinary or different types of things. And there are charts in here that you can also get on laminated sheets through the Game Masters pack that allow you to do different things in combat, in exploration encounters, and diplomatic encounters as well too. So you can take those stunt points and do something a little bit more extravagant. And they're not overpowered. They're not like you're pulling off a world-shaking events or anything. But you are getting a little bit of a bonus because you've done something exceedingly well. You've done something that allows you to use these stunt points to create some further effect of what's going on as well too. So that's the easy part. The Adventure Game Engine is really easy to teach, and it's really easy to understand. Where it gets crazy is that you can just say, hey, there's a chart in here. It takes us X amount of time to go from Earth to Eros, or to Titan, the moon Titan, and you could just do it and just say, hey, we travel there, and we're going to do this in between the time. It takes this a couple months or whatever, and we're going to do this. And there's some downtime activities and stuff in here as well too. But there's also a cool chapter in here on if you want to create things that are really deep and visceral and realistic. And reading it, I felt like man, I should have paid more attention in high school in science class, because it goes into things of like how gravity works and how gravity in the solar system works by using things like planetary bodies and moving objects and how things interact with each other, and all that kind of stuff. And it was a chapter I had to read a couple times because I was just like, what? And it's very well written so that you don't feel like you need a degree in astrophysics to figure it out. But it goes into a nice degree of depth. So that if you want that kind of stuff in your game, if you want that depth of realism of space travel in your game, and living life in a zero G environment or low gravity environment, that you can do those things and you can do it as very real as you want it to be as well too. But again, it's a completely optional thing. It can be as simple as just traveling from place to place, and but if you want that depth, that's all in here as well too. So the Expanse role-playing game by Green Ronin Publishing, go check it out today. I highly encourage it. It is very, very quickly becoming my new favorite science fiction game. Thanks. Until next time, I'm Questwise, and I am out.